starting to awake. Based,
There is a science of human freedom.
It's also a spiritual journey.
a person under hypnosis will start to see that there's something wrong. Something is wrong.
It's great that you know what you come to know, but until there's an outlet for that information and you start creating and putting your creations out into the world to teach other people so that they can become as knowledgeable as you.
Life. What is encouraging life is good. That which takes away from life and growth and creativity is not good.
Hello. This is Chris Jansen. Welcome to the End Evil Podcast. End Evil Podcast is streaming live Thursday nights at 6 p.m. Pacific, and that's 9 p.m. Eastern Time. We're streaming live on the One Great Work Network, and I'm also on Twitch, and I'm also on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. So, thanks for joining us, folks. This is a special week. I have with me a guest this week, an awesome guest, a gentleman I met recently. He's standing by here. I'm going to bring him on the screen with me. This is a good friend I just met, Crypt Rick. Hey, what's up, Rick? How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. This is kind of different. Last week you were in the interview chair.
Yeah. It's pretty cool, man. This whole podcasting thing, how it works, we get the opportunity to meet new people and work together on these projects. It's pretty exciting.
It is. I had a great interview with you on my radio show, and a lot of people really enjoyed it. I got feedback right away that people really enjoyed what we covered, what we spoke about. So it was really cool. I'm really fortunate that I met you, and I'm meeting a lot of great people.
Yeah, your show's on Revolution Radio, right?
Yeah, Revolution Radio. You can find it at freedomslips.com. And I'm on every Monday night, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I'm also have that's a 2-hour show that I do. And then on Saturdays, I have a 1-hour show, which is in, there's 2 studios. I should have said that. So my first show is in Studio A. Then on Saturdays, I'm in Studio B from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And that's just a fun show that I do. I talk about music. I talk about movies and kind of breaking down movies for any hidden meanings in them and stuff like that. It's just a fun show that I do for an hour because I call it the decompression hour because with all the research I do, like I'm doing and interviews and stuff like that, I do need that hour to kind of a day just to kind of find my center, and I do that with music mostly.
How long have you been doing putting content out there? Is this like something you've been doing just the last few years of your life or a long time?
Not even. I started the radio station in January. I got an offer to go there. So that was my first show was January 7th. And I started YouTube probably, I'm trying to think. It was probably about, I did my first interview, and I could be wrong by a month or two, maybe about 7 months ago. Because as I was telling you, Chris, I've been wanting to do interviews and presentations and stuff like that. I didn't have I didn't know technologies, and I'm very open and upfront about that. I was very just had a phone. I didn't have a laptop. I didn't have any of what you see here. I didn't have cameras. I didn't have a mic or anything. And that was always my excuse not to do it. That was what I kind of find myself going to that was my excuse. And then, so about 8 months ago, I finally got tired of excuses and lying to myself. And that's when I bought all the stuff that I got. So I'm definitely learning as I go here. I'm very up in front about that. I've only been doing this for about 8 months. And everything I'm doing right now, I'm learning the hard way by trial and error and all of that. When I first started, Chris, people were telling me I had to go through use OBS. I didn't even know. I never heard of OBS. I was like, what are you talking about? So I had to actually learn OBS and stuff like that. So now I'm on YouTube doing a show where I interview people, and I'm on the radio station doing interviews.
And that's a lot of balls to pick up and start juggling real fast. I'm pretty amazed at how quickly you have picked it all up. Because for me, it's been a real challenge, especially the technology, getting past the technology, learning
Me
how to
too.
work all these things. I'm still battling sound settings every episode.
Yes, it
We
is.
just joked about that. But yeah, I mean, I got to give a big thanks. I know you're also someone who's studied the What on Earth is Happening podcast, and Mark Passio's work
Oh,
was a big
huge.
inspiration to me, and
Yes.
that's really what was the kick in the ass that got me going on podcasting.
Yep.
And the End Evil podcast. My slogan for the podcast is "Evil is the destruction of freedom," and the fact that freedom's getting destroyed on a large scale is why it's so important for folks like you and I to speak out and let other people know that we're not alone, for one, and that we're not going to stand for it, and that if we work together and we all start getting our minds in the right place, that we can actually make a difference.
Right.
And so for me, meeting you and having you find me through one of the shows I made and getting excited about that work, it was a big boost for me. It was a big pat in the back. So thanks for reaching out to Leslie Powers. She did an excellent job when we did the fish tank episode, and
that's how I
you were
found
telling
you.
me that's the one that you saw first. So I was
Yep.
pretty glad to hear that. A lot of times you feel like you're not reaching people, but we are. So
Yeah.
so thanks for doing this work, man. Appreciate it.
It's something I've been wanting to do for years. And as we were talking off air, that I was doing a form of shadow work on myself many years ago. I didn't know that's what it was called. I didn't know it was called shadow work. I didn't have a terminology for it, but it was how I would confront myself, and I would do that sitting quiet with myself every day, and I still do it to this day. And that's how I started learning about, like, I was doing shadow work. I didn't know that's what it was called. It was great to finally have a word for it, what I was doing. And yeah, when I found Mark's work, it actually changed my whole life. I was telling you that, and the information was it's so valuable. And I needed that kick in the. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to swear, so I'll say, but
Yeah,
I
no, you
needed
can
that.
swear on here.
Okay,
I'm
I
not
needed
worried
a
about
kick
it.
in the ass to get me going, because I was making excuses. I had the knowledge in my head, and I kept thinking I needed more and more knowledge, and I was just kind of using it in my life, and I was trying to educate a few friends around me and stuff like that, and family members. But I wasn't, and then I kept saying I didn't know the technology. That was always my thing. I don't have a laptop. I don't understand anything. And then I heard one of Mark's shows where he got really upset, saying that, there's no excuses, and you have to learn technology, because he's 100% right. That's how you're going to reach people now. That's just the way the world is. And so I heard him get really upset one show, and that's what gave me the kick in the ass. And I was like, okay, I got to stop making excuses, and I'm going to have to start doing the work. And so that's when I started buying everything that I needed and learning the technology. And I'm still learning as I go, but at least I'm here, and you have to start somewhere. That's the way I see it.
You're on. I'm going to write it down. It's Revolution Radio. It's on Mondays, right?
Yep.
2
Monday,
p.m. Pacific.
3.
What's your time?
Well, okay, 7 p.m. my time is on Mondays. It's from 6 p.m. till 8 p.m. on Mondays. Eastern
6
Standard
p.m.
Time.
What is your time?
I'm in Eastern Standard Time, so I think
6 p.m.
Pacific it would be
Eastern.
3.
Okay.
I think it's 3 o'clock your time Pacific, if I'm
Cool.
not mistaken.
Nice. How'd you hook up with that? It's called freedomslips.com.
Yep.
How'd you get connected with that?
I was listening to Revolution Radio because Jay Parker, who I found, I started when I was watching Mark Passio's lectures on YouTube, there was other presenters, and then I watched them all, and then I started watching Jay Parker's, and then somebody told me that Jay Parker was on Revolution Radio, so I went and started listening to Jay there, and then I eventually, they saw my interviews on YouTube, and I kind of somebody said, some of the people at Revolution Radio like your interview style at YouTube, and then I said, well, I would be willing to go on the show. I would love to have a radio show. I haven't been doing it very long, but I would love the opportunity to go on there and do interviews and talk about natural law and freedom and all of that. So they gave me a show. I'm so grateful for them for giving me the chance to do that. I really enjoy doing this. I really do.
Sometimes I've kind of described it. I meet people who are coming to different realizations about the problems in our world and what's going on around us and getting frustrated. And I'll hear them talking about these things and something they read or something they heard. And like I start feeling like it's like a pot of water on the stove, where the heat's turned all the way up, right? You start
Mhm.
getting heated, and pretty soon your inner waters start boiling, right?
Exactly.
And they need somewhere to go. It's just going to pop that lid off and boil over the sides, which is basically, in terms of being a human, it's feeling really uncomfortable inside of your own body when you got all this frustration and anger about what's going on in the world and you don't have an outlet. And so,
Right.
I think even just for the therapeutic end of it, it's been good for me to speak out on this stuff and to try to reach
Right.
people and to
And that's
be,
the thing,
just
like,
really honest.
oh, for sure. And that's the thing that I've asked people even around me all the time when I talk to them, like, do you think we're free? Do you think that humanity's free? And I'm shocked when people think that we are. When they say yes, I just kind of like, it just kind of makes me shake my head first. And I'm like, you really think we're free? And they're like, yeah, we're free. Like, and I'm like, wow. And and then I like to ask people too, if they like, because I keep saying, and I try to tell people, we're losing our rights because people don't know what a right is. So how can you defend something if you don't even know what you're defending? So I'll ask people around me, like, can you describe to me, just in a sense, what a right is? And I am shocked how many people cannot give me the standard definition of a right. And I mean, like, it's like no wonder we're losing them when nobody even knows what they are. And that's, in this day and age, that is really scary, and it's really sad, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, the way Mark puts it down, a right is an action that doesn't cause harm. I never heard anyone say that
Yeah,
until I heard him say it, and
me
it was
too.
sort of like, yeah, that seems really basic. That seems like it really makes sense on a
Yep,
deep level. Why is it coming to me like news when I'm 30 years old, in life, and no one's ever,
exactly.
I mean, it's like the rules of kindergarten, and we should have just stopped there. It's like when you keep adding rules to that and overcomplicating things, saying, "Oh, we can make up all these other rules," that's where we start going astray.
For sure.
With too much kind of made up, man-made type humans and lies. What age were you when you really started seeing through some of the big lies of our culture and the big lies of
Um,
around you?
well, as I was telling you when we did when we've talked off air and on our interview that I did with you, that I was somebody in school that always questioned things. I just remember that from a very early age, and things just didn't make sense to me when I was younger, like the things in the world and things didn't the stuff the teachers were telling me. And I went to a Catholic school, so they were heavy with the Bible and all of that stuff. So for my first from public school, which is kind of different than your guys' school in the US, I think. So grade 1 to 8 in Canada is public school. So I was in a Catholic public school, and so I was always questioning the priest. I would question the teachers about stuff that didn't make sense, that I didn't understand why they were teaching it the way they were. And so I was always in the principal's office. Like, they were always sending me away, call my parents. And I was very fortunate that I had parents that encouraged me my whole life to always ask questions. Don't just take things at face value that people tell you to believe. Do your own thoughts on it and come to your own conclusions. So they didn't like that in public school, believe me, not the one I went to, at least. So I was very young, I think, and I just always wondered about things, and I always saw through things, I think, that just didn't make sense. When other kids I would be around, they would just buy it. They would just, okay, the teacher tells them this, that, or the priest tells them that's the way it is. I wasn't that way, always questioning, and I'm still like that. I'm still like to question and look into things myself. I don't just want to believe something. I think that's very dangerous.
Yeah, but there's still even beyond that, and I think that's awesome that you always had that questioning thing in you. Maybe a parent helped instill that. Maybe it just came from birth. Who knows?
Hmm.
But I still, even with that, there's a lot of people out there that are, asking questions. But some of the biggest questions, I think the hardest ones to get through, are when we start talking about, the order followers of the world.
Big time. Yeah.
or politics or government. Like a lot of people see the problems that are happening and they still want to rely on a political solution.
Mm-hmm.
Like they think, oh, this army is going to come in and they're going to save us, or there's these white hats behind the scenes that are going to get things fixed up. We just need to get the right person in power. We just need to get rid of these few bad apples, and then things are going to work out. At what point did that kind of logic not work on you? Or how do you see it actually working is another way to put it.
Well, as it goes to politics and voting and stuff, like I know a lot of people. I hope I answer this in the way that you're asking. When I was never somebody that bought into government and the legitimacy of it. That was something I would question. I don't know why. I'm not saying I was very young when I did, but as I got older, and I'm not somebody that would ever vote and stuff like that. And so I just never. I didn't know the terminology of why I didn't want to vote for it. I just knew it wasn't right. And that was so I was never somebody that was like bought into that whole government thing. I just always questioned, like, why do these people in government have the right to tell me what to do? Like, where do they get this right? I used to always say that, like, who gives them the right to do that? And then people would say, oh, well, you elect them and then you give them the right to do that. And I'm like, I don't elect anybody. I've never been voted. So why they, and so the kind of that argument I would get into with people is that I don't understand why these people they think they have these rights to say to me what to do and stuff like that. So I was never somebody who voted in that. And then I always try to tell people, because I do have family and friends that do vote, and they always say nothing ever changes. I was just on watching a show where the person that was doing the interview kept saying, we see the protest, we see what's going on around the world. People are like doing, protest all over, and nothing's changing. And I said, nothing's changing because you're hoping you're going to vote people in to change things. And it's never worked in the past. It's not going to work now. And it's not going to work in the future. This isn't a voting problem. This is a spiritual problem with people and a consciousness problem. So, I mean, you're not going to vote this one away. And that's why nothing's changing. And I've been telling people that for years. We're not going to vote this problem away. This is way beyond that. This is a bigger battle than that. So
Yeah,
I hope that answered your question.
It does. No, and then like I never really thought about the voting thing for a lot of years, but when you really start thinking about it, it's really not how we operate in the real world. I've often described it as this, like if you and I and one other person were going to go out to eat, right? And you and I wanted Chinese food, and that third person wanted food and couldn't eat Chinese food or hated Chinese food, right? We wouldn't force the third person to go to the Chinese food and say, nope, sorry, we got the majority rule. Two of us decided, therefore you have to go where we want. That's not practical, and it just doesn't work in real life. And yet somehow we've kind of all been convinced over time and just the structure of the way we live that it does work. But it never has worked out really well. It's not working for us. It's only working for a few select individuals, as I can see,
And that's what I don't understand is how people can't see that it hasn't worked. And like, I mean, I see it clear as day. And it's like, how can you not see that? Just keep voting in different people. You see in the past that this has never worked? It's not working now. So why do you think it's going to work in the future? I guess that's a definition of insanity, right? I mean, it makes sense. And I think people think that they're just going to vote this problem away. And that's why I'm doing the great work now, because I know that this isn't a voting, as I said, this isn't a voting problem. We have to start reaching people and letting them know like why things are the way they are. And that's why I said it's a spiritual battle. We have to start getting people awake and knowing the difference between right and wrong and stuff. And that's where this battle is going to be won, I think. And well, I know it is. And that's why when I was watching in Canada, when you just know we had the trucker convoy and stuff like that, and I was watching very closely to see how the so-called authority, the police, would react and stuff. And I saw the protesters saying, yelling at the police, come join our side, like just walk over to our side. And I'm like, this isn't going to work. You're dealing with people that are so brainwashed in their beliefs and their cult that they're not just going to walk over like that. We have to start educating people about the difference between right and wrong, objective morality. And that's where the battle is. I think that's where we're going to make a difference. If enough of us are doing this work, we will make a difference. I know we will if we have enough. And then that's how we're going to wake them up to get out of that cult and to make them start questioning things. It's not going to be just voting it away.
Yeah. And I'd be curious to see, for you, you were telling me you've had some pretty big physical obstacles in life.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then,
I can talk about it.
you were telling me in the beginning about getting started on this. You had obstacles in terms of technical things you were worried about not being able to
Hmm.
do, or, what do you think are the biggest obstacles that keep people from taking the next step on the shadow work? Because really, that's the heart of what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, I think that is the biggest. I think that's the foundation. I think people don't want to do that shadow work, and I think until they start looking in on themselves, because I think, and a lot of people point at people and say everything's their fault. The world is the way it is because of that, because of that, because of that. They point, and I did realize that I had to point at myself, because that is where I have to start, and that was my foundation. And shadow work, as I was telling you, I was doing that a long time ago. I started that probably 15 years ago. I didn't know what it was called, but I was doing it. And that made such a huge difference. And I mean, yeah, I did have physical, that's what got me on my journey to where I am now. And I was telling you off air, and I don't mind talking about it. I mean, you can tell, but kind of like the way I am, I'm very stiff. I can't move my neck. My back is fused. I have a disease called ankylosing spondylitis, and it basically fuses your spine. They call it bamboo spine too, and it fuses your back and your neck, so you can't move. So I'm kind of hunched over. Always, if I walk, I kind of look at the ground. And so I got that news when I was 16 years old, and it was devastating to me at that age. I was very spiritually immature. I think most people are at 16. Um, Very heavy in ego. I thought my body was everything. I thought, like, oh my God, they told me I was going to be in a wheelchair by the time I was 20, 25 years old. So I was devastated by that news, and ended up drinking very heavy for a lot of years. That was how I dealt with it. I just dove into the bottom of a bottle, basically. And then I started doing shadow work on myself. I didn't want to be that way anymore. And then I started doing the shadow work and asking myself the questions, why am I doing what I'm doing? And sorry, this is hard for me. Just give me a second. Um, and then I started to realize that I'm not just this body. I'm not this body. I'm something so much more powerful, and my brain is so much more powerful. And I thought, if I have a destroyed body, yeah, I got a crappy hand with a body for sure. I mean, my body's pretty beat up from my disease, but I can hone my mind into a razor. Like, I can, my brain is fine, and it's working and firing, and I'm learning. And that's when my whole life changed. When I made that realization, I still remember that moment that I realized I'm not just my body. And that's when I started doing the work that I've been doing for all these years, learning. Is because I knew that I was more than that. Sorry, I'm upset. Sorry.
Hey, man, that's what makes it real and being human. What I really can't stand is, people taking their news and making their decisions off of commercialized, people that are out saying things to make money, to affect your emotions, to try to get you to feel bad, or, you know,
Hmm.
to be swayed to one side or the other. Part of what I used in my process of discernment, because it's hard in this world, especially you start digging into, for me, one of the big research areas was September 11th. I was looking into that,
Me too.
and I
Yep.
was kind of separating from, where I worked at the time when I was looking at all that stuff was a courthouse, so I was kind of tied in with getting paid from government money and being surrounded by people that were completely indoctrinated into believing that they're doing the right thing. And all of a
Hmm.
sudden I'm realizing they're the opposite. They're doing the wrong thing.
Right.
And, it's a heavy pill to swallow. It's a lot to take in, and going through all that, meanwhile, I'm looking online, I'm looking at websites, I'm listening to podcasts, and you start
Me too.
wondering, are all these people really good? Or are some of these people that are giving me information maybe working for the other side? Maybe they are paid, And so you got to go through this process of weighing things and asking yourself who's real and who's not. And you know
Hmm.
what? When I see someone like yourself who comes on the screen at their own expense and their own time, and they get their own emotions about things, that makes it real. And that's how
Right.
we reach people, is because even though we're still having to work through these screens and all this crazy ass technology, we can still be real with one another. And I think that's personally one of our best ways
Right.
to reach other people, is through the heart.
Yeah.
because that's really what they're attacking, right? In a lot of ways, especially the last couple years.
Oh yeah.
How's all this COVID stuff affected you in
Oh,
your life?
that was the big kick in the ass with COVID for me. Was I think I was walking around very because I'm around. I think what happens is you get around a group of people that kind of think the way you do, and you kind of all studying the same things and looking into the things, and you know about natural law, you know about objective morality, and so you don't you kind of I you got to be I at least I had to be careful that I thought that everybody was like that in the world, and I was like, okay. And then COVID gave me that kick in the ass of how brainwashed people are, because as soon as they started pumping that fear on the media with COVID, I if you would have told me 3 years ago, Chris, that they were going to shut the world down with a scary story, that's what I call it, that they would have shut this whole world down, I would say then we're not that far gone. There's no way
Mm,
humanity's not going to question it. And nobody questioned it really. Not like some people did, of course. I don't want a blanket statement that, but 99% of people went along with the whole agenda and didn't question or anything. And I was like, wow, I gotta get some skin in the game here. I gotta start waking people up, because that was my big eye opener. And in Canada, they lifted the mask mandates and the vaccine mandates, I think about, don't quote me, about a week ago, 5 days ago. I was just out today, and like 80% of the people are still wearing masks. There's some people wearing rubber gloves. There's still people wearing face shields. And I'm like, we have a lot of work to do. People are really, really, really brainwashed. Like, and that's what I noticed over COVID. It didn't affect my life too much. I did, I knew it was going on. I never got the vaccine. I never even considered it. I just didn't, and I wasn't wearing a mask. I just didn't buy into the whole thing. So it didn't affect my life in a lot of ways. Yeah, I couldn't go to certain restaurants and I couldn't go to stores, and that kind of sucked because I couldn't do a lot of things, but it didn't affect, like, it woke me up, is that we need more people doing the great work, because it was shocking to me. And I like to get your thoughts. Was it shocking to you how quick people just rolled over? It was eye-opening to me.
yeah, it was like I knew there was a problem,
Yep.
but I had no idea to what extent. And the mask wearing was one of the things that was like really shocking to me. Like, okay, here you're asking people to do something that they've never really done before, and I think of people as being pretty kind of lazy in our
Hmm.
society in a lot of ways.
Yep.
People, it's hard to get them to do things. It's hard to get them to think. It's hard to get them to exercise. It's hard to get them to do anything unless they're getting paid for it or they get something out of it. And so I'm trying to
Exactly.
understand what's the initiative to kind of like block your nose and mouth when that makes it uncomfortable. I have a lot of experience with mask wearing myself, coming from construction and having problems with dust. I was well aware of the frustrations with wearing a mask. It doesn't work well. For one, you get moisture building up in there. It fogs up your glass if you have glasses.
For sure.
It kind of makes it harder to see. You feel that rubber thing. There's a lot of things that really suck about wearing those things, and yet it seemed like people just were embracing them like they really wanted to be. And what all I could see is the symbolic aspect of this kind of slavery thing, where you're putting something on your face, which is like, it's like putting yourself in the submissive state. And just seeing crowds and masses of people all around me like that, I was like, wow, it's way worse than I thought,
Me
because
too.
people don't get the most basic fundamental aspect of this whole thing, is that it doesn't really matter how bad, if there is a disease, even if it was that bad, you still don't have the right to make people do things. You
Exactly.
still don't have the right to force anybody to put something on their face or their neck or their head or anything.
Hmm.
And as far as that goes, I had people tell me, well, if you're going to be so against masks, then what about shirt and shoes? And then I'm thinking, I don't think those rules were ever right either necessarily. I don't know why we bent over for those, but I mean, at what point do we just kind of like have things that are sort of common sense that we do because
Right.
they're respectful, and then at what point is it become wrong?
Yeah.
Where do these rules and laws become bad? That's the thing people are still struggling with, and I think you're catching on to it. When we harm, right?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And I would, like I said, I was really shocked. I really was. Like, it kind of started with the great toilet paper scare, I call it, I think of 2020, or if you remember that everybody was worried about toilet paper, and I was like, nobody's buying into this. Like, there's no way they're going to sell people on this. And I actually went to a Walmart parking lot. I wanted to see for myself if people are actually going out, and there was people buggy fulls of toilet paper, and I'm like, we have a lot of work to do. And then the COVID thing, like I said, hit, and I saw how quickly people just folded, didn't question anything. They followed authority to the T, still are to this day, because like I said, the mask mandates have been lifted, and there's still 85, I'm probably being generous, actually. It's probably more, but I'm going to say 85% that I saw today were still wearing a mask. And I don't think they're going to take them off anytime soon. And these were people outside. One person standing at a bus stop I saw wearing a mask. I was like, wow, we got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess if someone was coming from the extreme opposite point of view of us, they would be like, "What's wrong with the mask?" You know, that
Yeah, oh, I hear
it's
that. Yep.
actually a thing to help us. You know, you guys are bad by not wearing them.
Yep.
You know, it's just so extremely different on this farther end. I really struggle with how to see that perspective, because it just seems so foreign and ridiculous to me. Like, almost like, you know, calling the sky pink is the way I've been describing it. You know, like,
Yeah.
you're trying to say something's a reality that was never a reality. There's really no evidence for masks ever stopping any diseases. You know,
Right.
I don't know where anybody ever got that idea that such evidence existed, because it doesn't.
Right. And that's the thing, is that nobody's looking into that. All you have to do is a little bit of your own research, and you can find the information that these masks don't do anything when it comes to viruses, especially. And nobody's even questioning it. That's the thing that bothers me, is that they're just going along with it. It's like, wow. Like, I mean, and like I said, a couple of minutes of research, you're going to find out that these masks don't do what they are claiming they do. And people just seem so lazy, they won't even look into it and stuff. And they just go along, wear it. They tell you to wear it, they wear it. And now it's so bad. The brainwashing is so bad that now the mask mandates are lifted and people are still wearing them. They're like, I thought everybody I would see would have them off. They'd be happy that it's lifted. They're actually opposite where I live, Chris, and I'm not even lying. They are fighting where I live to get the mask mandate brought back. People are fighting that. They do not want that lifted. They want people to have to wear a mask. They're still fighting for that here.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
They want their mask.
How about in your community, people that you deal with? Do you have family and friends that you've had difficulties with, or not so
Oh,
much?
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm the black sheep of my family right now because I won't get vaxxed. Like,
Wow.
I honestly am. Like, I mean, on like certain family members, I'm not gonna say everybody because it's not a blanket statement, but I have a few family members that are very upset with me that I didn't get vaccinated. Tried to guilt me into it, tried to, tell me that it was good and all of this, and I wouldn't budge. I was like, I'm not getting it. And so, yeah, I've lost a few friends over this whole vaccine thing. But the people I'm around now are, they're basically on the same page as me. It's just I did lose a few along the way because I wouldn't give in. And as much as they tried to convince me to do it, I wouldn't do it. I'm not doing it. And so, I mean, I've lost a few along the way.
Well, the bright side, I mean, I feel you, man. I've very similar, made new friends, and some other friends are,
Yeah.
it's just things aren't the same. But I'm gonna keep trying. I don't give up on people. Once you're my friend, if you want to be my friend, as long as you keep trying, I'm here.
Yeah.
I don't give up on people. I love people, even when they're doing something that's wrong. I mean, I've certainly made mistakes in life.
Me too.
We need each other, and this is really, it's an exciting time in history. It's a fantastic time to be a part of history right now, because being able to make the decisions you made, and being strong in your own choices, and knowing where you stand in a time like this is exciting, because now you're a hero among people that
Right.
that chose the harder route when other people were taking the easy route. So I'm curious, have you ever thought about this? Is a question I love asking people. Like, what's the most important thing to you, or what's the most important things in life to you? It's
That's a
kind of a
tough
hard
one.
question. It
It
is, but
is. Yeah, because
curious what comes up.
it's multi um
Faceted, huh? Yeah.
faceted. That's a great word. Thank you. Multifaceted. I what do I want to be remembered for? Oh my god. I don't That's so tough, Chris.
Well, not so much. I guess what I was thinking here is just like, what are the most important things, for
For me,
us
the most
as
important
humans?
thing is, yeah, for me, the most important thing is freedom. I mean, I don't know what else to wake people up, to let them know that, to let them, to teach them about morality, that what's going on is not right. Like, I mean, this is so evil in its ways and so wrong. And I think that's what I'm trying to do. I want to show people. That's what I want is freedom. That's what I don't want. We don't. I want to abolish government. I want all of that. I want rid of these chains and these boots that they have around our our necks and stuff like that. So that's what's really important to me is doing this battle now, so that the generations coming up behind us are not going to have it worse. Does that make sense? Like, I mean, I'm thinking of the people the children behind us. What are they going to come into if we're not fighting for freedom now and we're not standing up against this evil? What are they going to come into? Like, it's going to be worse, and I can't let that happen. I'm going to try not to let it happen on my watch. So, I mean, does that answer it? That's a
You
tough
know
one.
what? You said something that so many people don't say, and that's like the most important key of it to me. Like freedom, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
that's the one true divide, like Mark called it. But then
yeah,
beyond that, you talked about what matters outside of yourself, beyond yourself, the next generation of
yes,
people coming. It's hard, I think, in our society because we're so self-centered. Our
exactly.
our culture is really like hooked on this idea of me, me, me.
Yeah,
I always think of those, the little uh, seagulls, right? Saying mine,
me, yeah.
mine,
That's a
mine,
mine, mine,
mine,
mine.
right? And when you're able to actually, I mean, that's why this tree of life that I put behind me is so important to me because it represents the interconnectedness of all life.
I have the pendant I
And
was showing you. I have the pendant
oh
around my neck.
yeah,
Same thing, the tree of life. I've been wearing it for like 7 years. It hasn't come off my neck.
yeah. So that, I mean, I really appreciate that answer that you've really obviously done that shadow work because I think that's where that anybody who really digs deep into
Yeah.
themselves will realize that we have a greater responsibility.
We definitely
You know,
do. And I mean, I have friends that have young children, and I see them having to put a mask on, and the children are screaming and they're crying. And I'm thinking the damage that that's doing to them, that we haven't even begun to see what this psychological damage is doing to the young kids. And then no, not on my watch. I'm going to, no, that's when no, I'm not letting it happen. I'm going to do what I can to not. They have to have something better to come into, and if we're letting everybody, we're letting them all down by not getting into this battle. And to me, that is very selfish. Like, we know there's a problem. I think most people, I think, would admit there is a problem in the world. They may not know what exactly it is, but it's up to us. We like if we have to get in this fight, and I'm here now. I'm in it. I'm not on my watch. That's what I want to say.
I like it. That could be a good slogan. Not on my watch.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, no, the kids, we need that. They have to have something better to come into. And if it's this bad for me and you, Chris, I can't even imagine if we continue to let this evil and these, like I call them, and I've heard from Mark calling these master psychologists that are running the world. If we keep letting them go where we are, I can't even imagine how bad it's going to be in 10 years, 5 years. People have to start fighting back.
I think one of the things I always struggle with is I've had these conversations with just about anybody I can, whether it's at break, at work, or in the grocery store, starting to chat with somebody. And sometimes we get these little options to have these conversations with people and bring these things up. And I think what I usually get back from people when I start talking about the idea of anarchy, no rulers,
Hmm.
that we don't want any politicians or any government, that's where people really kind of get this fear in them. And they're kind of like, well, if we didn't have rules, if we didn't have anybody in charge and we didn't have voting, then everything's just going to be crazy and
I hear that.
chaos.
Yeah, I hear
So
that
I
all
know
the
you've heard
time.
this. I'm curious to see what's your answer. How do you deal with that one?
Well,
Here's the pitch. What do
I
you do?
well, I just had a discussion with my friend. We were actually just talking about this afternoon, and I have a good friend that we talk about this all the time. We're always talking about natural law, and I'm teaching him as he's warming up to it, and but he's very very good at like we bounce back and talk about things, and he's very open to listening and discussing. And we were talking about that because I said a lot, and because he said that to me too. He's like, well, if there was no government, and there's nobody making the rules, it's just gonna, if you abolish everything, it's just gonna turn right into chaos, and it's gonna be like Mad Max. And I was like, no, because if we as teachers are doing the, and I hope this makes sense. God, I'm okay. I'm not used to being interviewed, so sorry. um if we're doing the great work and we are waking people up and we're teaching them natural law and we're teaching them objective morality and so forth, it, if you did abolish all of that, it wouldn't, if we everybody was learning this and going by that, we would know that government's wrong and it would naturally just dissolve, I think. And order followers would naturally dissolve if we were doing, enough people were doing this work, people were understanding the non-aggression law, principle and stuff like that. So I think that that would be my answer, is that I don't think if we're doing our work and people are learning about natural law and they're following these law, following that and they're living by the non-aggression principle, that it wouldn't be chaos, right? Do you know what I mean? Like, that's the best way I can answer it, that there wouldn't be chaos if everybody was living under natural law. It would regulate itself. It would be the right way to live. It would come together. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I've tried to imagine that and describe it myself as
It's hard.
well.
It's a hard one.
But it's a hard concept to share with people, and I think that to me is one of the fantastic things about what we're doing right now. When we have these interviews with other like-minded people that understand that freedom is the one thing that really matters right now for us
Yeah.
as humans. A lot of people will say love, and love is important, but it's
Love is,
also a
yes.
word that gets kind of misused in a lot of ways in our society, and especially in Hollywood and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it really doesn't. True love at this time in history would be pursuing freedom, because if you don't love our race or as humans, then you are going to allow them to be enslaved and continue down this road of harming one another,
Exactly.
right? But if you
Yes.
truly love them, then you're going to have to maybe even make some sort of personal self-sacrifice in order to maintain what's best for future beings, what's best for your children and their children after them.
Mm-hmm.
You have to fight for that, right? And that's, it's a tricky thing to try to explain to people. It's a hard pill to swallow, that
Yeah.
it's really up to all of us, not
Yeah,
just one
and
of
that's
us. But
that. Yeah, and that was the hardest part about the shadow work for me, and I think that's why most people don't even start on that. Is that you have to question everything, right? And I had questioned everything in my shadow work: love, why I believe what I do, and that's a scary thing. And I agree with what you say about how love is just kind of a word now that people throw out very easily. And I mean, I see people that don't even love them. Like they don't love themselves. If they did, they wouldn't be doing the things that they do. And that's why I always say it always boils back to shadow work for me. That's what made all the difference for me. It really did. That was the foundation. Was I had to confront myself and question what I believed and why I believed it and all of those things. And then that's when you start realizing that to love. That's what I learned to do. I didn't love myself when I found out about my disease, and I know I didn't love myself because I was drinking, I was miserable. I and going doing the shadow work is when I found my true love and my light, like my strength. I found that. And as I was saying, I found I'm not this body. And then I found out I knew what love was. Because I loved myself and I love myself now. Body means nothing to me now. I mean, it's a body, right? I mean, but I'm so much more than that. So I think people have to start connecting with themselves and loving themselves before, like, if you can't love yourself, how are you going to love anyone else? It doesn't work that way.
yeah, that's a really good point, Rick. And it's kind of like when I tried to make my presentation series, it really forced me to think, like,
Right.
okay, if I'm starting from the very beginning here, what's the first concept I would have to share with someone?
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that was like, oh, the first concept is the idea of value. If we
Right.
don't understand value of our own self, or the value of one human life,
Mm-hmm.
the value of choice, then how are we going to go from there? So that was the first thing that I really stuck on, is value. And an interesting thing is, I was going to kind of ask you about your the Crypt Rick. You got your picture. It kind of looks like the zombie guy. You kind of
Yep.
got your look, and there's sort of this almost like interest in death in a way, you know, and some of the music that is in the hard rock scene
Yeah.
that I know you like. I'm curious, how does that all tie into your thoughts on these subjects?
Um, I don't my the whole zombie look and stuff like that. I can tell you how I got it. It's not a very there is a story behind it. Why I got the name. Why I go by Crypt Rick, and it's just something that has stuck for many years, and that's because. Do you want me to tell you this story, Chris?
Yeah, yeah, I'm real curious.
Okay, okay. I got the name Crypt Rick because like 10 years ago, it might have even been longer. I used to be a manager for professional wrestlers. Now, not WWE or WCW, nothing that big, but in the local area, there was a wrestling scene, like, and it was on TV and stuff like that. And I got into managing wrestlers. And they were trying to find, I was a manager because I can't, with my disease, I can't wrestle, obviously. So I was a manager and I did a lot of the interviews and stuff like that, the stuff I could do. And they were trying to find a name for me, and I wanted to go by Crypt Rick, spelled CRIP, because I just thought because I'm not healthy and I'm crippled, that would be like Crypt Rick. That's where I wanted to go. And they're like, you can't do that. You're gonna offend people. And I was like, okay, I get it. I mean, so they said spell it different, spell it CRYPT, because you definitely like the darker things. I've always liked skulls. I've liked graveyard stuff and that. And I try, and that's very hard for me to tell people I'm not evil. Doesn't mean anything dark or anything like that. I just something I've liked my whole life. I like skulls and stuff like that. I collect them, ceramic ones and all of that. So that's how I got the name, was from wrestling, and it just stuck. All of my friends just call me that now. I mean, it's just something that stuck, and that was kind of where that image came from. The zombie logo and everything. That was all designed because of the wrestling thing. And it just kind of I just kept it because people knew me that way. So
Yeah, it's
that's how
kind of
I
fun. Well, you got your kind of
the whole
style,
look.
and you got the look. It's cool. I
Yeah.
like it. You know
Yeah, it's
what I
all
was
that's what
thinking
it's
about. This is kind of a trippy thought. You know, recently my friend John, you met John Rowland. Yeah, he works with Will Keller on the Natural
right.
Freedom League, and he was kind of talking to me recently about this idea of looking at death. You know, part of shadow work, doing some
Mhm.
journaling about death and how we think about death in our culture.
Mhm.
It got me to thinking that it is an interesting thing to consider because of what we were just talking about, our value, right?
Right.
And what I've asked some people before is what you do, you know, most of your time is go to work, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, would you die for your job? Do you care about it that much? And well, most people are like, what kind of question is that? Of course, I wouldn't die for my job, you know? And I'm
Right.
like, well, how much do you really care about something that you wouldn't die for, you know? I really would like to be doing something that I care so much. I would die for it. Like that the value of how I'm living is so
Mhm.
valuable to me that, you know, I wouldn't give it up for anything, you know, and
Right.
that's kind of like the ultimate choice when someone's holding a gun to your head and you tell them no, you know, and we
Yeah.
don't want to get ourselves in that position, obviously. But,
Exactly. Yeah.
you know, I'm curious how that strikes you, what I'm saying about the difference between life and death and how our value, you know, plays in there, you know, especially
I
being someone who's looked at more difficult health situation than a lot of people have, you know.
yeah. I think of death. I think of death all the time. Actually, to be honest, like not like dwell on it. I should watch how I say things. I don't like dwell on it, but I've thought about it. I think everybody does. And I just realized that through my like over the years, it doesn't scare me now. It doesn't, because I know I'm more than this. I don't think that I know there's something. I know that I'm not just this body, right? So I it doesn't scare me in that way. That like, oh my god, I'm not. I'm gonna die one day. Obviously, we all do, but I do know that this is just part of the journey that I'm on, and so it doesn't bother me that way. I don't think of it like that way. Maybe it's because of my health problems all my life that it's kind of given me. I've thought about it more than most people and had to do the shadow work on it and stuff. But it definitely makes me value. I What it does for me is thinking about it is that I have to get my ass in gear, and that our time here is not infinite. We have a limited amount of time here, and we do you want to spend your time not doing stuff that matters? Do you want, and I'm not saying don't have fun. Every time I get into this conversation, people are like, oh, so Rick, you don't want anybody to have fun. You just want people to do the great work and be crabby and wake people up and you don't want to have fun. I said, I never said that. Of course, I want people to have fun and go out and do things and stuff like that. But I know that I'm only here for a certain amount of time, and I want to make a difference, and I want to try to make a difference for humanity, for the, like I said earlier, for the people coming up behind me, the young children. And that is why I just realized, thinking about death and confronting it the way I have, that we're here a very limited amount of time. And a lot of us, I think, waste our time worrying about things that are very trivial, and we have to start honing that in and trying to make a difference. That's what I'm trying to do. If that makes sense. That's a tough one too. I
Yeah,
feel like I'm babbling.
it's all tough ones, and
It is.
that's a lot of what we do in podcasting is kind of babbling, right? We're trying to work out the best way to say things, and every time
Right.
we do that with each other and with other people, we get a little better at it, And I
Yeah.
think I've had some people make fun, say, "Hey, it just gets to be like an echo chamber. You're just
Hmm.
meeting with people that are saying the same thing, and you
I've
guys are
heard
only
that.
hearing
Yep.
each other." And what I think about that is, my feeling on it is, well, if you think about something like a cylinder, when you shout into a cylinder, eventually it comes out the other end. And if you
Yep.
get enough people putting that echo into a tube, it's going to come out even louder. So,
Exactly.
there's a process going on of us figuring out the answers. And I
Right.
think that's what people struggle with. They're afraid when you tell them, I think we should do away with all this structure in our world. And they're like, well, then it would be chaos. I mean, the truth is, to get from here to there is going to be some chaos, but we're
For
going
sure.
to have a lot more chaos the way we're going too, which could
Oh
be
yeah.
much, 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 much worse from my point of view. And but that's all stuff we're kind of imagining, and I think for the sake of this conversation, and heading towards the end of the hour, I think we should kind of like think about the things that we can give to other people, that they can take away,
Hmm.
and the things that have worked for us, in terms of, I think honestly the biggest game is what you're saying, inside of ourselves and the shadow work. So, I'd be curious what advice you give to other people who might be struggling, especially like you've described. You've gone through addiction issues,
Hmm.
alcohol, feeling like you don't have enough, feeling like you don't have the money. How do
Hmm.
people get out of those state of mind and get to the place where you're getting now, where you're feeling excited and inspired to, and not afraid?
Um. Geez, boy, you give tough ones. I gotta think of. Oh, you really do. I mean, I can only speak for
You
what
know what?
I
I try
did.
to think about like myself,
I do.
you know,
Yeah, I do
20
too.
years
But
ago, and what I didn't know, and how would I guide myself, you know?
oh, I would like, yeah. If I could go back and talk to myself, like back then, I would definitely tell myself that you're not just like, and I can only speak for myself. So I mean, I hope maybe people understand what I'm saying. But if I could go back and talk to myself how I was when I first got my disease, found out about it, I would very much tell myself that you're not just this body. You are something so much more, and you have to find that inner strength. You have to find the spiritual side of yourself and realize that you are so much more, and that you're more than a body. And that's why I can say that's what got me started in the spiritual work, is that I just got tired of, you always hear that saying, being sick and tired, and I just got that way. I didn't want to be drinking anymore. I was tired of feeling miserable all the time. So that's when I started doing that shadow work. And I think that's what people have to start doing. You have to recognize that there's a problem, which I had to admit. You have to admit there's a problem before you could ever fix it. And so I knew there was a problem. I was drinking, I was depressed, uh, and I knew I had to get out of that. So that's when I started doing that shadow work on myself and asking, why am I the way I am? Why do I believe what I do? Why am I drinking? Where did this all start from? And then through the shadow work, and I still do it, like I said, every day, I got more and more answers. And then as soon as I identified that that was why I started drinking, was I was suppressing these emotions that I had about my disease, and that I was drinking because I was so in ego. I was like, "Oh my god, my body's horrible. Nobody's gonna like me." And when I realized that, it was that quick that I stopped drinking. It really was. And I wish I could. I think people want me to say that it took years and years and struggles and all of that. And I'm not saying that's like this for everybody. I can only talk for myself. But for me, as soon as I did that shadow work and I knew why I was drinking, I didn't drink anymore. It was literally very quick. I just stopped. And because I think because I dealt with that issue. That's why I was drinking, was because I was so in my head on ego and and worrying about what my body looked like, and worrying about what people would see, like when they see they see me like this being disabled. I don't like to say disabled, but seeing that I have a condition, I guess, that how would they think of me and stuff like that. So when I started realizing I don't care, and I addressed it, that's when I everything changed. And then so continue to do that. And every time I do the shadow work and I address things and I confront them, it makes me more and more happier, more excited. Do you know what I mean? Like it takes time. It's taken a long time to get this far. But that's what I would tell people, is you have to first identify there's a problem. And then you have to be willing to sit down and do the work. You have to be willing to sit down with yourself in a quiet room and confront yourself and be honest. That's the hardest part. That was the hardest part for me, is I had to be brutally honest with myself. And once you do that, I think it'll change. I really do. I think you'll start seeing the answers come and guide you. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I really appreciate you being so sharing your personal story like that.
Right. It's the first time
I
I've
think it
told it.
makes it real. It makes it real for other people,
Right.
and they can relate. And hopefully someone else will watch this show and contact you or contact me and like, hey, I saw your show and it really hit me.
Yeah.
Now I want to speak out too. That's kind of what we're trying to do. And then
Right.
I'm curious too, on that journey when you were going through that shadow work, did you for you, sitting still in a room, was it just kind of thinking at different times, or did you actually like write a journal or
I did
meditate?
both.
Were there? Did
Yeah,
you? Oh, okay.
I did both. I've always been somebody that journaled. And I would sit in a room, and I guess you could call it meditating. That's what I kind of looked at it. But I actually would sit in front of a mirror. I really would, because that was, as I said, I was worried about my image. So I knew I had to confront my body and my image, like with my disease. And that's why I would sit in the mirror and confront myself, and I would start asking questions, and that's where it started for me. And then I would journal afterwards, the things that I realized. So I would have a journal and I would write things down and I would go over it. And I do that every day. I still do that to this day, where I'll sit down quiet in a room. And I've had people say, you just sit in a room for a while, no quiet, that's easy. I'm like, try it someday. It's not easy
Well,
work. It was horrible. It was awful work. It was not fun. It's not fun.
one thing that makes it better, I think, is using the power of nature. I mean, you
Love
can do
nature,
it in a
right?
room, but if you got somewhere where you can go and get some heavy exercise too. For me,
Good point.
I do
Yep.
a lot of that work doing heavy exercise, like mountain biking to a lake. And then,
Good
by the
point.
time I'd reached the lake, I had worked sweat out of my body, probably all the toxins and bad
Right.
stuff. And then sitting at this beautiful lake looking at the creation of the intelligence, the great intelligence, the great all,
Mm-hmm.
and there are the analogies and the metaphors for all the questions that we have in our brains. I really see personally nature as kind of like the living Bible is what I like to call it.
Right. Me too.
To me, things that humans write is just things that humans write. But what exists in the natural world, like the tree of life,
Yep.
is the blueprint, the fabric of reality, and that's what we want to look
Right.
at to find the answers. From my point of view.
That's a great point, Chris. Like, I mean, yeah, you don't have to sit in a room. You can sit out in your yard, which I do, and I sit by myself in my yard, and I watch nature. I'm very big on nature. My whole life, I've been somebody that likes nature and being out in nature, gardening and stuff like that. Believe it or not, the way I look, yes, I do garden, and so I do get that. That's great advice. Like mountain biking, going for a walk. I didn't go down that path of the shadow work because of my disability. I can't ride a bike. I can't go for long walks. I can't do these things. So that was
Hmm.
not ever an option for me. But if you're healthy, by all means, that would be a lot. That would be great. That's great advice.
Yeah, and it just goes to show, like, even if you don't have a mountain to climb, you can still do it in your room. Rick did,
Yep.
you know,
Oh
and
God, yeah,
so
for sure.
you
It's not
know,
fun work, and I think that's why
it's
people
hard.
don't do it.
We're asking people to go down a rough road.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And yeah, and I think that's why where the world is the way it is, Chris, is because people do not want to take the time, and they don't I think they want to run the other way when it's you got to confront yourself and you're honest with yourself, brutally honest. I don't think anybody really wants to do that. And I think that's the basis for how we're going to get out of this mess is people have to start on themselves first, and then go forward.
There you go, man. That's it. You nailed it. That is, I decided to call this episode, freedom is the key.
Yeah.
And freedom is the key. And then I would say, like, the subtitle that is, you got to do the inner work.
Yeah.
It starts from the inside. You said it
100%.
really well.
Yeah.
It's
I'm
a
just reading
spiritual
I'm
war.
reading your chat. People are talking about wrestling. I look like Jimmy Hart, the famous WWE wrestling manager. Oh my God. And then reminds me
What
of the
is Rick's channel?
Undertaker's.
You have a YouTube channel too, right, Rick?
Yes, I do. Yes, it's Crypt Rick's I've Been Thinking. And you can find me on YouTube. And I'm just starting. I do interviews on a couple other topics too. I'm really fascinated. I do a lot of true crime in a way, like because I'm fascinated by what makes people think the way they do. So I think that's probably why I'm kind of attracted to the true crime side of things and stuff, because I like to figure out why people think the way they do, why they act the way they do. So I do interviews on that, but I'm definitely going to be doing more. I just put an interview up that I did with Will, where we talked about freedom, we talked about natural law. I have an interview coming up very soon that I'm going to be doing with Leslie. We're going to be doing an interview, and I'm going to have you on for a video interview, I hope, on my channel.
Right on. Looking forward to it.
It'll be great. Yeah. So yeah,
Yeah.
Crypt Rick's I've Been Thinking, and I would love you guys to come and join me and start checking out the videos I'm going to be doing, because I want to start doing presentations. I'm learning how to do that. I just got PowerPoint a couple weeks ago, so I'm learning my way through that. But I do want to start doing presentations in the future.
I'm looking forward to seeing those. That'll be cool.
I think so.
It's a process, you make one, then you watch it and you're like, oh, that's what I could have done better, and then you watch that one and you try to get people to actually, watch them and see what people say is the hardest part, to get anybody to actually check it out. But
yeah, and me learning the hard way too. Like I'm learning as I go. Everybody told me if you want to do presentations, you should at least know PowerPoint. Once again, I didn't even know what PowerPoint was. So when I tell people I'm learning as I go, I'm not exaggerating. Like up till 8 months ago, or a little bit, maybe 8 or 9 months ago, I have no idea. I didn't know what OBS was. I didn't know what PowerPoint was. I didn't have any of this equipment. So I just did it a piece at a time, and I am learning PowerPoint. So you guys do great presentations. Like, it's amazing. I'm not nowhere near that good yet. Mine are very basic.
Keep trying and keep practicing,
right?
And you learn something every time.
Exactly.
But we learn from each other, and I think this networking thing is a big part of the process.
I love
people have trouble envisioning what does a future without rulers look like. Well, it looks like this. It looks like us talking to each other and talking things out, even if we don't always. I mean, you and I are very much on the same page, but even if we hadn't been, I'd be willing to bet you and I could have got through this whole hour and had a really good conversation.
Oh, for sure.
And learned some things from each other, even if we disagreed. Yep. And I think that's part of the game that people can do. And that will help break down a lot of those walls and open up the doors to working as communities, working with each other, and working without coercion, working without having to steal from one another and take things and hire other people to come steal from us. That's the kind of 100%. Stuff we can do without. So
100%. And that's what I tell people too about the great work, is that I bring it up to everybody I know. I kind of bring it up slowly and I talk about it, and some of the people reject it. Some people want to hear more, but I'm going to keep talking about it. I'm just going to, even with my friends that are, they're not wanting to look at it a little bit. I just keep bringing it up, sowing the seeds that I can. Because you never know how long, like if I sow some seeds, it may take a month to grow, it may take a year, but at least I'm putting the seeds out there and hoping that they will look into natural law and objective morality and freedom and all these great things. So that's what I'm hoping I'm going to do, is at least put some seeds out there for people.
Well, thanks so much for doing that. I really appreciate it. It gives me inspiration. It gives me hope that, there's more people out there like you. And it's very inspirational that, you've worked past all your obstacles and now you're feeling really good about what you're doing. And I'm looking forward to seeing how that progresses. And I'm glad to be part of a community of people like you that care and are trying to make a difference. Thanks, Rick. Appreciate it, man. Great show.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me. I was so nervous. I've never been interviewed before like this. So
now you got past that.
I did
You
get
did
past it.
that.
Yep. Right. So yes, thank you so much for having me on. I had a great time and a great conversation. We always have great talks.
Well, yeah, we'll have more. And
For
you guys
sure.
can check out Crypt Rick Mondays at
Yep.
freedomslips.com, Revolution Radio, 3
Yep.
p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. And then check out his YouTube channel. Say that one more time. It's called
Crypt Rick's I've Been Thinking.
I've Been Thinking. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I've been thinking. Crypt Rick. Right on. All right, man. I'm going to go cut to the little end screen and
Perfect. Bye, guys.
stay on the line just for a minute so I could chat with you before we go. But
Not a
thanks so
problem.
much, folks, for coming. Appreciate it. And Evil Podcast is going to be back next Thursday, 6 p.m. Pacific, and it's 9 p.m. Eastern. Thanks for coming, folks. Have a good week. Evil is the destruction of freedom. Oh,
That was cool.
I got the wrong screen on here. Hold on a second. I can't get it. All right, I'll just end it.